Of the United
Boys, we did it. We made it, boys. UFC 245. I can't stop dancing. Who else is excited for this event? 3 title fights on this card. We have got Kamaru Usman finally fighting Colby Covington. More on that fight later on. We're going to be breaking that fight down from a betting perspective in tons of detail in today's video. And also 2 more title fights on this card. Max Holloway versus Alexander Volkanovski. Amanda Nunes against Germaine de Randamie. And tons more fights that are super interesting, including matchups like Mike Perry, Jeff Neal, Matt Brown, Ben Saunders is a fun one. Top to bottom, this card is absolutely stacked. And in today's video, we are going to be smashing through 5 of the most interesting fights on this card and really going into a lot of depth on these fights from a betting perspective. And I need your help in this video today because I'm still not fully decided on a lot of the fights that I'm going to be talking about today. So please leave comments below and let me know what you think about the stuff I've said after each of these fights, because I'm still kind of on the fence. I'm still waiting to see how the week plays out before making my decision on a lot of these matchups. Before we get into the first fight that I want to talk about in today's video, I do want to do a business deal with you guys. The first business deal I want to strike with you is, if this video gets 500 likes, I will drop another video before Saturday where we will be breaking down the co-main event between Max Holloway and Alexander Volkanovski, and that is a great fight. So if you do want that video, hit the like button below. As soon as this video gets 500 likes, I will start working on another video focusing on the co-main event. But don't worry, because today we've got some juicy stuff to get into for 5 of the most interesting fights on this card. And also want to give you guys a pro tip. In the last video that I put out last week for UFC Washington DC, I was popping strepsils, drinking water all the way through the video. It was super amateur because I'm currently battling a sore throat. I feel fine. As you can hear, I sound fine. Still got lots of energy, don't feel sick. But throughout that video, I took like a lot. I took a lot of strepsils. As you can see, don't know if you can read the back, basically tells you don't take more than 12 of these in a day. I think I took 12 of them just while I was recording the video, but I do have a pro tip. These ones, Strepsil sugar-free, they're bullshit. So this time of year, we're all getting sick, we're all getting run down. It's that time of the year, temperature changes, gets a lot cold, we've got the flu, all that shit, everyone's busy with Christmas. They're bullshit, they don't work very good. These ones, a lot better. So if you're in the UK, you got a sore throat. I don't know where they've gone. They're gone. Anyway, these ones bullshit. The other ones I just dropped, they're very good. We'll throw to the side. So anyway, I am really sorry. Throughout this video, you probably will see me pop a lot of strepsils, have a packet on hand, and you will also see me drink a lot, which is super amateur. But you know, it's just going to help me get through this video because my throat does feel really sore at times. And also, the last thing I want to talk to you guys about before we get into smashing through these fights, I want to talk to you guys about a super talented artist that designed this for me. You probably thought that my thumbnail game for this week is super strong, and as you can see, this is absolutely incredible. In fact, my face cam is blocking the artist's signature. If we just make this a little bit smaller, move it over, there we can see the artist's name, Kotor. Now, Kotor is one of my elite members. He's a great guy, and he's an extremely talented artist. And I think that his work is just, it absolutely blows me away how someone can produce content this great. He's super talented, and I think he's absolutely incredible at what he does. So please, guys, if you like this design that he put together for me, please go check him out on Instagram. He literally doesn't realize how good he is. He only just created an Instagram profile recently, and he's only just started posting. This guy just doesn't appreciate how talented he is. He's a talented young guy from Sweden, and I think that he should be doing his art for a living because he's that damn good. And as you can see, he's also got a brilliant thumbnail he's done for me for this Holloway-Volkanovski fight. If you hit the like button, we get 500 likes, and as you can see, Max Holloway actually liked this. So Holloway certainly thinks Kotar has got legit skills. I think that he's got legit skills, but like a lot of super talented young people, they don't realize how good they are, and Kotar definitely doesn't understand how great he is at what he does. So if you appreciate his work, if you think he's a beast, please leave a comment below and let him know, because I think his work's excellent, and we're going to be working a lot together in the future, and I'm going to be doing my best to help him actually make a living from doing this, because this guy is just incredible at what he does. So yes guys, please show Tobias or Kotor some love in the comments below, and there's our thumbnail from tomorrow. We've already seen it. Volkanovski trying to get his hands on the belt. Will he get his hands on the belt? Who knows? Hit that like button, and I might be able to give you guys into some insight into how that fight is likely to play out. And I think that's all that I wanted to talk about. So let's get into the first fight in today's video, which is a cracker really. It is a fight that everyone is interested in. Very interesting fight. We're going to be talking about Jose Aldo against Marlon Moraes. Now, where do we begin with this one? I feel myself saying this a lot in this video. It's going to be an interesting video, I think. So I'm going to be saying this a lot in this video. But this is actually a fight which I haven't made my mind up on yet. And I hope in this betting analysis video, I'm going to be able to do a good job of explaining why I haven't made my mind up on this fight yet. When I initially researched this fight, I very reluctantly passed. And I researched this fight on Monday because obviously, you know, it's no secret the challenges that Aldo's facing going into this matchup in terms of cutting down from 145 pounds to 135 pounds the first time. And when I researched this fight on Monday, I did like Moraes in this fight a lot, and it was a very hard pass for me. And usually, if I pass on a fighter, I can kind of just like move on and forget about it. Oh, my hair's all messed up for Colby dancing to Colby's walk. I'll fuck my hair up. Anyway, Moraes, oh Siri, go away. I said go away. Moraes is a guy who I passed on Monday, and I just can't get this guy out of my head. It's constantly nagging at me that I shouldn't be passing on this fight and that I'm being overly cautious. And because of that, I still haven't made my mind up. I still haven't closed the door on betting Marlon Moraes this week. And when I explain all my reasoning, all my thoughts around this fight to you, I'm hoping that you can do two things for me. I'm hoping that you can, you know, drop a comment below and let me know if you think I should pass, or if you do think I should bet Moraes. You know, if you think I shouldn't, if you think I should bet Moraes because I'm being overly cautious, or if you do think I should pass on this fight. I'm really interested to see what you guys say in the comments. That's what I need from you guys to help me out with after I've basically explained to you how I'm feeling. So, I always say to you guys that one of the easiest ways you can make money in this game is by letting the odds do the work for you. And I guess that's the biggest trouble I'm having on this fight, because, you know, in the last 24 hours or so, we start to see money come in on Moraes. His odds are declining, and now, you know, his current average odds are around about 1.50, which is minus 200, which gives him an implied probability of about 67%. So to get any value on Moraes here, you've got to give him around about a 72% or better chance of winning, which is a really big probability to assign a fighter. You know, Aldo is a world-class fighter. I know his best days are behind him, but he's still a very, very dangerous opponent. And, you know, to cap anyone at a 72% chance of beating him is going to be tough. Now, I think it goes out saying, I personally haven't seen anyone betting Aldo this week on social media. You know, if we look at his current average odds of around about 2.75, which is plus 175 for an implied probability of 36%, you know, to bet Aldo here, you'd want to be giving him around about a 45% chance of winning. And I think it's just really hard to do that with the current state of his weight cutting situation. I mean, who knows how he's going to look at bantamweight, and that's really going to form the biggest part of this betting analysis for this fight. So that's what's causing me a problem here. Now, 72% for where you'd need to cap Moraes to bet him in this fight may seem like a huge figure, but the crazy thing is, I just don't see Aldo winning. I really don't see Aldo winning. And a question that I put to you is, can you think of any other fighter, any other aged fighter, who has dropped down a weight class and actually looked good or looked better than they were at the higher weight class? I've been racking my brains all week. I've been asking a few of the guys in my chat room on my website, some of my members, can you think of any fighter that has dropped a weight class and looked better? And I can't think of any. I really can't think of any. I mean, some people might say Donald Cerrone, but in my opinion, Cerrone looked much better at welterweight than he did at lightweight. You know what I mean? So it's a tough one. Jose's not particularly old at 33. But he has had over 30 pro fights. He did build his career in a pre-USADA era. And he has taken a lot of damage throughout his career. You think of the enormous amount of damage he took in these 2 fights against Max Holloway. Go back and watch those matchups. Look at the shots that he absorbed on the ground. That's a life-changing amount of damage. We've seen, vicious beatdowns in the octagon change a fighter forever. Fighters like Raquel Pennington and Kat Zingano developed hypothyroidism after severe beatings at the hands of Amanda Nunes. Junior Dos Santos was never the same again after that beatdown against Cain Velasquez. We can think back to iconic beatdowns in fights which have changed a fighter forever, and it's very difficult to see a scenario in which Aldo could just brush off the damage he took against Holloway and be the same fighter. Of course, he was brutally knocked out by Conor McGregor, involved in an absolute 25-minute 5-round war with Chad Mendes. This is a guy that's taken a lot of damage over the years. So even though he's only 33 years old, there's a lot of miles on the clock for Aldo. But he's not a particularly big guy. At 5'7" with a 70-inch reach, there are much bigger guys than this compete in a bantamweight. But obviously the concern is Aldo usually kills himself to make the 145-pound featherweight limit, so it's unlikely that he is going to sail down to 135, look great and look better than ever. But a lot of people are, speculating that, or saying that Aldo looks terrible when he weighs in at 145. There's no way he's going to make 135. So I thought it would be a good idea to go back and actually watch Aldo's last weigh-in. So this was from UFC 237 in his fight against Alexander Volkanovski. So just thought I'd hit play here, because obviously, he's going to have to weigh in 10 pounds lighter for this fight this weekend at 135. So we're just looking at, where this weight could come from. And even though I wouldn't say Aldo looked good here, I certainly wouldn't say that he looked terrible either. You see some guys, they're all skin and bones, absolutely terrible on the scales, but Aldo doesn't look completely terrible. Still very muscular, his face a little bit sucked in, but we've seen much worse. And I wanted to show you this weigh-in from his last fight, because yes, Aldo doesn't look great here, but at the same time, it doesn't look impossible for him to make 135. He is quite a muscular guy there. Now, what will that do to his performance? Well, we're going to talk about that in this breakdown. But this week, a big part of my research, I guess, where I've said that I haven't made my mind up on this fight, is really going to be keeping an eye on Aldo and keeping an eye on how he looks. Now, just today, we started to see the odds move on Marlon Moraes. His odds started to decline. And I believe that was because pictures started to surface from Jose Aldo, who has arrived out for fight week for UFC 245. So here's one of the pictures of him. Difficult to really, it's not the best picture, is it? Bad lighting. He's wearing a hoodie. The camera's all fucked up. But that's one of the pictures. You kind of get a different perspective on him, when the camera's zoomed out here. But certainly doesn't look good. Face very sucked in and dehydrated. And if we scroll down a bit more, Here's another one as well where doesn't look as bad, but certainly doesn't look great either. But this is all we've got to work on so far. These pictures were posted earlier on today. This is all we've really got to work on so far to gauge how Aldo's going to look at 135. And if you're asking me how I think Aldo's going to look at 135, from my experience, I would honestly say I think that he's going to look terrible. You know, if you think about all of the things that will suffer through a brutal weight cut, you know, Aldo's cardio should suffer. His athleticism, his explosiveness should suffer. I expect him to actually be a lot slower at 135 than he is at 145. And for me, the biggest thing which could suffer, which could really, you know, cost him in this fight is his chin. You know, we know that when fighters drop a weight class, their chin really can suffer. And obviously, Moraes is lightning fast, hits like a truck, split-second, devastating KO knockout power, shots that come out of nowhere. And you know, if you're seriously dehydrating the brain to cut down to 135, you're fighting a vicious KO artist like Marlon Moraes, who's been knocking out some of the best fighters in the division: Aljamain Sterling, Jimmy Rivera, Rafael Assunção. I mean, who has ever knocked out Rafael Assunção? That might have been the first time he's ever been knocked out. Okay, he didn't get knocked out, he got submitted, but the submission came from being knocked down. You know, Assunção was badly hurt and Moraes jumped all over him. So Moraes is extremely dangerous, and if Aldo's seriously dehydrating his brain, it could end very badly for him, because of course we just take a quick look at Marlon Moraes and what he's doing in the run-up to this fight. I mean, he's trained from Mark Henry and gone to the best gym in the world, American Top Team, to train full-time. And I mean, Marlon Moraes always looks fantastic. Here he is around about 3 weeks ago, looking in fantastic shape. You know, he's only 31 years old. You know, he's in his prime. He's looking great. Yes, he had a bump in the road in his last fight against Henry Cejudo, but I mean, Henry looked absolutely outstanding. No shame in losing to a guy like Cejudo. So the difficult thing for me with this fight, because now we're going to go on to talking about how both these guys match up from a stylistic point of view. Difficult thing about this matchup for me is when we're studying this fight from a betting point of view, all the footage that we've got to evaluate Aldo on is from his performances at 145 pounds. But obviously, that's not the Aldo we're going to get on Saturday night. I don't know what Aldo hopes to achieve by dropping down to bantamweight, but this is not... The Aldo that we're watching in these fights is not the Aldo that we're going to get on Saturday night. We just spoke about how his speed, his athleticism, his cardio might suffer dropping down a weight class. So what does that actually look like? And I think that's why I'm having a real hard time capping this fight, because if we're capping this fight based on how Aldo's looked in the past, betting Moraes at an implied probability of 67% is ludicrous. There's no way you can cap him in the price range of 72%. There's no value there. If Aldo shows up looking like he has, in these fights, Moraes is a terrible bet at these odds. But obviously the likelihood is Aldo isn't going to look like he has in these fights, because his cut to 145 is tough, and he's likely to look a lot worse at 135. But that's an assumption, and I always say, I said it last week when we were breaking down the fight between Cody Stamann and Song Yadong. Everyone was on Song Yadong for that fight, but I said, you can't bet Song, because we have no idea what his takedown defense and ground game is like. And what happened? Stamann goes out, grapple fucks him, and then, Song gets an absolute gift from the judges, and the fight ends in a draw. And this fight's the same, right? You never want to make assumptions when it comes to betting on MMA. And while it's extremely likely Aldo looks like shit at 135, it is also a bit of an assumption. So I'm kind of battling myself at the moment with how to go with this. But let's talk about this fight from a technical point of view, how these guys match up skill for skill based on their past performances. And then we can kind of like weigh everything up, and I'll summarize where I'm at the moment. So from a technical point of view, Aldo is one of these guys that likes to stay in a defensive shell, and react to what his opponent is doing, but also punish them for when they come forward. So what you'll see from Aldo is he'll stay in kind of like this tight boxing guard, and as his opponent opens up, he will look to counter them, to kind of deter them from attacking. And then what you often see Aldo do, you know, in the final 30 seconds or a minute of a round, he will explode to try and steal the round. It's the age-old Jose Aldo, George St. Pierre style of fighting, where they understand that judges score rounds in favour of the fighter that finishes the round the strongest. So they'll try and keep the round semi-competitive for the first 3-4 minutes of a round. Then towards the end, they'll do something big to try and steal it. Now, for the first time ever, really, that didn't happen in Aldo's last fight against Alexander Volkanovski. You know, the actual fight looked a lot like most of Aldo's fights, where not a lot was happening in the first 3 or 4 minutes. And when I watched that fight, I'm like, okay, well, this is normal for Aldo. What he's going to do in that final minute is go for something flashy, throw a flying knee, crazy combo, vicious leg kick, and try and steal the round. And it never happened in the Volkanovski fight. I was constantly waiting for Aldo to go up that gear, and it never came. And for me, that could be quite telling here, because when you go back and watch that fight, Aldo looked very frustrated. He looked frustrated with himself at the end of every round, and he just couldn't get going. And for me, what I saw from Aldo in that fight was a huge red flag. I saw a fighter that was very gun-shy, a fighter that was seeing the openings, but they were unable to react to them. And if you know anything about combat sports, you'll know that reflexes are the first thing to go when a fighter starts to get past it, man. And when Father Time starts to catch up with them. You know, one of the most famous examples I can think of is Anderson Silva against Nick Diaz, where you finally saw, you know, Anderson looking really gun-shy and nervous and seeing the openings and not having the confidence to react to them. And of course, Anderson's never been the same since that fight. But if you go back throughout, you know, fighters' careers, as long as I can remember, you know, fighters get to this stage in their career where, you know, you think back to, you know, how Vitor Belfort looked, you know, in his fight against Nate Marquardt, and onwards since then. You know, if you think of all these guys over the years, when they just reach a point where they don't have the reflexes to react to what their opponent is doing anymore, that's usually the sign of the end. And in my experience, they never get it back. Now, was this fight against Alexander just an off night for Aldo? Was it an anomaly? Was it something Volkanovski did that threw Aldo off? I'm not sure, but for me, the way Aldo looked might have been a sign that Father Time is here, and now this move down to 135 pounds is kind of like a desperation move for him, where, you know, he felt confused and frustrated in the Volkanovski fights. He wasn't able to do the same things that he'd been doing his whole career. And maybe this cut to 135 is his last-ditch attempt to try and rejuvenate his career and try and fix what's wrong. But, of course, I just think it's a terrible idea. Now, you know, some people will say, you know, I've been having a long discussion about this fight with one of my VIP members this week, Just Jay. And, you know, he is all aboard the Moraes train with me. But he was saying to me, he brought up a really good point. You know, people are forgetting that, you know, the Volkanovski fight where Aldo looked so bad was only 4 months after the fight against Renato Moicano, where Aldo looked amazing. And that's very interesting. But like I always say, results don't actually mean that much in terms of assessing, you know, how a fight is likely to play out. It's way more valuable to actually look at what happens in that fight and trying to visualize how both guys match up from a technical point of view. And when you go and watch this Renato Moicano fight back in the cold light of day, you'll actually find that the writing may have already been on the wall that Father Time was starting to catch up with Aldo and his reflexes were shot. Because if you go back and watch the first round of this fight, similar to the entire 15 minutes against Volkanovski, Aldo basically does nothing. Moicano was cruising, and then at the beginning of the second round, you know, Aldo hurt Moicano, and you know what Aldo's like. When he smells blood, he goes for the kill, and he swarms his opponent. He doesn't give him any opportunity to recover, and that's what happened. But had he not hurt Moicano, I could have seen this fight playing out exactly the same as the Volkanovski fight, where Aldo just didn't get going, didn't do anything, and probably limped out and lost quite a weak decision. So it's interesting. I feel like the writing might have been on the wall, except I wasn't able to spot it because the finish kind of clouded my judgment. And obviously, the Jeremy Stephens finish clouded my judgment as well. So yeah, this is also an interesting point for me, though, the nature of the way that Aldo finished this fight, because of course we know historically, once Aldo does smell blood and he senses he's got you hurt, he will throw the kitchen sink at you and he will absolutely go for the kill, and he doesn't give you time to recover. And I feel that is really significant in this matchup. We can close this down. We can close this down here, and we can also close down Kotar's amazing work as well. Don't forget to follow him on Instagram. I will leave his link in the profile below. But yeah, that way that Aldo reacts to really hurting his opponent is significant, because if Aldo does hurt you, you've got to be prepared to go through hell to recover, because he is willing to commit every last single piece of energy he's got to kill you. And you need to be able to be prepared for that and fight through it. And what is a bit of a red flag on Marlon Moraes' side is obviously, you know, when momentum started to swing in Cejudo's favour and Cejudo was able to hurt him, Moraes wasn't able to fight through it and get back on that horse. And it was quite a prolonged, systematic breakdown of Moraes. And the one thing I do worry about with the nature of this loss and the way he kind of threw the towel in mentally is that if Aldo does hurt him and if Aldo does go in for the kill, you know, does Moraes have the steel to fight through it? You know, based on the Cejudo performance, he doesn't, and that is a red flag. But then, you know, if the Aldo that we're expecting to show up at 135 pounds shows up, it's very unlikely Aldo's going to be able to hurt Moraes anyway, because we always say, you know, you've probably heard me use this expression quite a lot when I've been doing these breakdowns over the last year, that speed kills in MMA. And, you know, Aldo for the majority of his career relied on his speed to cause his opponents huge problems, whereas this is a fight where Marlon Moraes will have a huge speed advantage over Aldo. I really do think Moraes will be the much faster man. And we always talk about, you know, leg kicks, and whenever we're breaking down a Jose Aldo fight, leg kicks are one of the things we talk about as being his most dangerous weapons. What's interesting here is, you know, over the last few years, Aldo's really gone away from those leg kicks. Doesn't really throw too many leg kicks at all. Whereas Marlon Moraes, just so happens, one of his most dangerous weapons is the leg kick as well. And his leg kicks are absolutely devastating. If you just go back and watch his first round performance against Henry Cejudo in his last fight, you know, the leg kicks that he was blasting Cejudo with were absolutely devastating. And what's interesting here is that Aldo stands very heavy on the lead leg. He's very flat-footed. He's quite a stationary target. He focuses on boxing defense. He doesn't really check kicks, and you would expect him to be quite a bit slower at 135 pounds as well. So the irony here is Aldo built a career off devastating people with leg kicks, but in this fight, he might actually get a taste of his own medicine. I do think the leg kicks from Moraes could be a big part of victory. Also, don't forget that Aldo was suffering from some knee injuries around about the time he fought Volkanovski. You know, this was only 7 months ago, so who knows if Aldo's knees are fully healed up now. You know, Aldo's old school. He's the type of guy that'll fight injured. You know, 2 or 3 vicious, devastating leg kicks from Moraes could completely change the complexion of this fight. So I've talked a lot there, and I really need to just catch up on my notes and make sure I've covered everything that I want to cover. Think I have, you know. I don't really want to talk about grappling in this breakdown because, you know, I do try and keep these videos as short as possible, and if we're being realistic, both these guys are very difficult to take down. They're both even harder to hold down, and they are both primarily strikers, so I do expect this fight to take place standing up. If it does go to the ground, both guys are both very high level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts. They should be able to hold their own on the ground. I think that's pretty much it. I think I've covered everything. So for me, you know, I haven't made my mind up on this fight at the moment on whether I'm going to bet Moraes. I think for me the big issue, you know, while I summarize, is in order to bet Moraes, you've got to give him around about a 72% chance of winning this fight. And based on past performances, it's very difficult to do that. I mean, another red flag with Moraes, I just remembered something I didn't mention, was these 2 fights against John Dodson and Rafael Assunção, which ended in split decisions. Now, The reason why these fights ended in split decisions is because at times Moraes can be a little bit too passive, too patient, and he doesn't really let his hands go enough. He doesn't do a very good job of putting his stamp on rounds. But on the flip side, I don't want to be too harsh on Moraes for these performances, because let's be real, Dodson makes everyone look bad. You know, the fight against Rafael Usman was his UFC debut, so could have been some octagon jitters there. And having said that, you know, both these fights took place 2 years ago, so Moraes is become a lot more aggressive since then. His record shows that. His last performance against Henry Cejudo showed that. But it's just something I've got to cover. Just otherwise I feel like it's a key detail that I've missed out. But yeah, to cap Moraes at 72% feels really aggressive to me, because based on past performances, I can see this being a very competitive fight. Maybe both guys are tentative. Both guys coming in this fight lacking in confidence. You know, it might be a cagey, close fight where someone just squeaks past the other and wins a split decision. Having said that, I at the same time just can't see Aldo showing up and looking good at 135 pounds. I just don't see it, and I think it's quite likely Moraes starches Aldo, particularly with Aldo's chin possibly suffering, you know, in the bantamweight division. Whereas I don't think it's that likely Aldo starches Moraes based on past performances. Could be wrong, but that's how I'm seeing it. So it's a difficult one for me. I feel like Moraes is going to win easily, but capping him at 72% is like a nagging doubt I have in my mind. So my plan is I'm just going to wait and see how the week unfolds. Watch all the fight week interviews, watch all the embeddeds. I'm going to watch the weigh-ins, and at some point this week I'll make my mind up, probably on fight day actually. But it's a tough one for me. Let me know what you think in the comments below, guys. Am I being too cautious here? Should I just go for Marlon Moraes, you know, or am I right to pump the brakes a little bit? I just feel like I can't think of any fighter, any old fighter with a lot of miles on the clock that's dropped a weight class and looked better. I can't think of any. And maybe Aldo's the first to do it, but fighting a young, hungry bull with explosive knockout power on every strike like Marlon Moraes, I think makes it very unlikely. But who knows? Please, guys, let me know in the comments below. Help me out with this one. I'm really interested to hear your opinions on it. And like I always say, I don't always have a chance to respond to all your comments, because these videos get tons of comments, which I'm super grateful for. But I read every single one of your comments. You know, I love it. So please, boys, leave a comment. And now, with that, I need a little bit of a drink, because this video's already a long one, man. That was a complex fight to kick things off with. My throat is really starting to hurt, so we might... I know the strap's still going too. There we go. Sorry about this, boys. Very, very unprofessional. But now, let's go into the next fight that I want to talk about in today's video, which is going to be Peter Yan against Uriah Faber. Now, Peter Yan is the biggest favourite on the card. We can see his current average odds floating around 1.21, which is minus 476 for an implied probability of 83%. So to get any value on Yan here, you've really got to be giving him like, I would say like an 86, 87, 88% chance of winning, which basically means he has to tick every single box here to be able to bet him. And I personally don't like betting guys in this odds range, because you know, there are so many things that can happen in MMA. You know, disqualifications, fouls. You know, fighters could be fighting injured. I don't know, maybe Peter Yan throws a punch, breaks his hand, gets a compound fracture on Uriah Faber's head, and you know the fight gets you know, ends by TKO. You know, maybe you know, there's all kinds of crazy things in that. Maybe Yan gets cut, the fight gets cut, stopped through a cuttage, stopped, cut. You know what I'm trying to say. Anyway, it's difficult to bet guys in this odds range. I'm not opposed to it, but it's not something I do very often. I need to see something really special. I need to see like a skill gap as big as what we saw with Makhmudmuradov and Trevor Smith last week for me to pull the trigger on these kind of odds. But Peter Yan certainly ticks almost every box here. He's young, very strong, very athletic, very powerful, hits very hard, world-class boxing, strong wrestling, great in the scramble, cardio for days, granite chin. I can't think of enough compliments to pay Peter Yan. He's absolutely excellent. And of course, this is going to be a very tough fight for Uriah Faber. He's now 40 years old. He's had almost 50 pro fights, and I don't want to repeat myself, but all the same stuff we've just spoken about with Aldo and miles on the clock applies to Uriah Faber. You know, Father Time can catch up with you very, very quickly. And of course, he's only fought one time in the last 3 years. And that fight ended very, very quickly against Ricky Simone. So it didn't really tell us anything about where Faber is from a physical point of view at this stage in his career. For all we know, Father Time might have already caught up with him, and he could be completely shot. So very, very tough fight for Peter Yan. For Uriah Faber. This. You know, I can recommend a bet on Faber. Obviously, there's no way that I would recommend you bet Faber here. Peter Yan at this stage in his career is significantly better than Faber everywhere. But at the same time, I don't know if I love Yan either. You know, my one big criticism of Yan is that he's very reckless. You know, we've seen him dropped a couple times. You know, in his UFC fights, John Dodson dropped him. He's very, very reckless. He loves a scrap. And I don't always feel comfortable betting on guys as huge favourites when they just come to scrap. I mean, Peter Yan's one of those guys that doesn't care about rounds. He just goes for the kill. He just wants to win the fight. Sometimes they can get him in trouble. You know, we haven't seen a lot of his submission defense. His takedown defense is great. If you want to see more of that, watch his fight against Magomedov from 2017. He fought him in 2016 as well, but this fight contains lots of grappling. So go back and watch that fight if you really want to learn a little bit about Peter Yan's takedown defense and ground game. But yeah, Yan should win. I mean, it's up to you whether you want to pay this price. The problem for me is Yan's advantages are pretty much baked into the odds. I don't see a great deal of value there really when he's already got an implied probability of 83%. It's up to you if you want to bet him. I don't want to spend too long on this fight. What can you really say, man? Yan should win. Doesn't take a rocket scientist to work that out, but MMA's a crazy sport. Who knows, man? Who fucking knows, right? Okay, let's get into the next fight that I want to talk about in today's video. And it is a very, very interesting fight. A very interesting fight. Not a fight that I thought would be that interesting, but it's actually one, you know, which the irony is I've just talked in a massive amount of detail about the Marlon Moraes Jose Aldo fight and how I haven't made my mind up on that matchup yet. And I'm going to do the same now for this fight between Ketlen Viera and Irene Aldana, because I would say out of all the fights taking place this weekend, the fight between Irene Aldana and Ketlen Viera is giving me the biggest headache. And I haven't made my mind up on this fight either. But this is a fight I'm very interested in betting on. And haven't bet either of these fighters yet. Haven't closed the door on betting either of these fighters yet. But again, think it might just be a little bit too early in the week to pull the trigger on this fight. Probably smart to wait for the weigh-ins, which is what I'm going to do. But hopefully by me sharing my research with you guys on this fight, you know, when the weigh-ins take place later in the week, when we get all the information from the Fight Week interviews, we see how both these girls match up with the stare-downs, you'll be able to make your own decision on this. But again, this is probably going to be a fight I'm going to wait until fight day to make a decision on, but it's certainly a very interesting one. When I began researching this was one of the first fights that I researched this week, because when I saw that Irene Aldana was an underdog to Ketlen Viera, that was very interesting to me, and I couldn't understand why she was the underdog. Now, if you look at her current odds, she's currently around about a 2.50 underdog, which is plus 150 for an implied probability of 40%. So to bet Aldana here, you've got to cap her at around about 50%, which, you know, from hazy memories was very possible. I thought that Aldana would be a great bet at these odds. If we look at the odds on on Ketlen Viera, you know, current average odds available on her are around about 1.59, which is minus 169 for an implied probability of 63%. To get any value on Viera here, you'd have to be given her around about a 66-67% chance of winning. Now, Viera wasn't on my radar at all, but this fight, you know, we spoke about this last week. this fight was a great example of why fight research is so important, because I went from thinking from hazy memories that Aldana would be a good bet to seriously considering a bet on Ketlen Viera. From a stylistic point of view, she's a bit of a nightmare for Aldana. But before we go into talking about how these girls match up from a technical point of view, I guess I just want to cover off the X factors, which are making me a little bit reluctant at the moment to bet Viera. Because obviously, I'll keep these odds up because I'll keep referring to them throughout this breakdown and betting analysis. Capping a fighter at 67% of winning is quite a steep probability. And it's one of those fights where if Ketlen Viera shows up and performs to her full potential, she's a very good bet at these odds. But we know, for whatever reason, female fighters can be more inconsistent at times, and we haven't seen that much of Ketlen Viera. You know, this is only going to be her, you know, 5th fight in the UFC. She's been quite inactive. She's only fought 4 times since 2016. Let me just talk to you about some of these X factors which are making me a little bit concerned. So the first X factor is that Ketlen Viera was scheduled to fight Tonya Evinger back in September 2018, but she had to pull out of that fight with a knee injury. So this article here is all the information that we've got to work with. Viera said that she's got a knee injury that requires surgery. We don't know a lot about what the knee injury was. We don't know if she's had the surgery, how the surgery's gone since then. And that's a bit of a concern. I would just like to know, like, you know, what the injury was, how did the surgery go, and we don't have any of that information. And because she was injured, here we can see the fight was scheduled there. Because she was injured, she hasn't fought since March 2018. So there could be some ring rust here. This fight took place 18 months ago. It's a long time ago. Who knows how Ketlen Viera is going to deal with ring rust? Who knows if her knee's healthy now? Who knows how the surgery went? You know, is she coming back and fighting because she needs the money? Or is she coming back and fighting because she's healthy and she's raring to go? It's impossible to say. And I'm hoping, this is one of the reasons why I haven't decided whether I'm betting on her yet. I'm hoping that when we get fight week interviews, which are probably going to be published sort of like Thursday afternoon, hopefully some of the MMA media out there will interview Ketlen Viera, ask her about the knee injury, and maybe we'll get a bit more information straight from the horse's mouth on how she's feeling going into this fight, what the injury was, how the surgery went, etc. I would also say, for all the wiki cappers out there, I know a lot of people only wiki cap MMA. If you are looking to fade Ketlen Viera because you're thinking, well, Kat Zingano's not very good at this stage in her career, and Ketlen Viera only beat her by split decision, just want to make it clear that this is one of the worst decisions of 2018. Absolutely terrible decision. And I brought MMA decisions up so that you could see for yourself. Ketlen Viera absolutely dominated Kat Zingano. She should have easily won a 30-27 unanimous decision. Here we can see every single media member scored this fight for Ketlen Viera. The majority of them 30-27, which is how I scored the fight. It was domination for Viera, but for some reason one of the judges scored it for Zingano. Maybe they got the names mixed up or something. But yeah, this was a clear win for Viera. So if you're wiki capping this fight and thinking about fading Viera because she was in a close fight with Zingano, please know it wasn't close. It was at a domination. So let's talk about this fight from a stylistic point of view. So if this fight stays standing, it's likely to be very close and very competitive. I think Irene Aldana is the best boxer in the bantamweight division. She's got great pure boxing, very light on her feet, cardio for days, granite chin, you know, great footwork. But she doesn't look like she's got that much power in her hands. You know, if you go back and, you know, you consider some of her fights over the last few years, you know, Vanessa Mello just walked through her shots, you know. And Aldana landed like 9 million strikes on Vanessa Mello in that last fight. And yet, you know, in that third round, Melo still wasn't really hurt that bad, wasn't wearing that much damage, which indicates to me that Aldana doesn't really have that much power. And remember, Melo was stood right in front of her. You know, Aldana was teeing off in this fight, and yeah, maybe Melo's got like an abnormally incredible chin, but at the same time, it's not the first time we've seen girls walk through Aldana's shots. Remember the fight against Betch Correia? Betch Correia showed Aldana no respect, walked her down, walked through her power shots, and again, Aldana couldn't really hurt her. So that's one thing to think about with Aldana. Yes, she's got excellent technique. When she lands on girls, it doesn't like she hurts them that much, and a lot of her shots fall short. Now, that's significant in this fight because Ketlen Viera, she loves to walk her opponents down. She's got like a herky-jerky style of boxing where she's very good at cutting the octagon off, and she throws like lots of looping left and right hooks. But she likes to walk her opponent down. She doesn't mind, you know, letting her hands go and eating a shot to give a shot. And what you'll often find with Aldana is when she lands on her opponent, it doesn't really back them up or seem to hurt them that much. But when they land on her, you quite often see the big shot trouble her a little bit and cause her to like stagger her back and stuff. It gets her attention, is what I'm trying to say. You know, in the Betch Correia fight, you'd see, you know, Aldana land a 3-strike combo, and you know it wouldn't really bother Betch that much, and then Betch would fire back with a counter strike, and it would, you know, snap Aldana's head back and back her up, and you know, it's just, I see that kind of fight here, except Viera is much better than Betch Correia. You know, Betch Correia came very close to winning a decision against Aldana. It was a very close fight. I feel like Viera could go one step further. So if this fight stays standing, I expect it to be very competitive. You know, it is pretty much a 50-50 fight which way it could go. But on the ground, there is no question that Viera has a huge advantage. Viera is a very strong wrestler. She has a very heavy top game, very active from top position with good ground and pound. And even though she's not the best offensive wrestler, and Irene Aldana is difficult to take down, Aldana's got good takedown defense. Ketlen Viera does have a very good body lock to trip takedown, which just so happens to be a technique that Irene Aldana is very susceptible to getting caught in and taken down with. And the problem with Irene Aldana is, even though her takedown defense is pretty good, she is one of these boxers, one of these strikers that is like a moth getting sucked into a bug zapper. She's one of these fighters that always seems to go to the ground with her opponents. And if she goes to the ground with Viera, she should be in a lot of trouble. Because one of Aldana's biggest weaknesses is that she's incredibly weak off her back. If you can, you know, take Aldana down and flatten her shoulders out on the canvas, it's very easy to control her from top position. And Viera does look for the takedown in her fight. So she can get this fight to the ground, she should be able to rack up a real good amount of control time. I don't see Aldana being able to work her way back to her feet. So from my perspective, the way I look at this fight is, you know, I know Viera is the favourite at the moment. And if it stays standing, it's probably going to be very close. But if it goes to the ground, she has an enormous advantage over Aldana. It really is a big advantage. So I do think there could be a bit of value here. Of course, like I said at the beginning of this breakdown, the things making me pump the brakes at the moment is, of course, Viera hasn't fought in a long time because, you know, she's been out injured with this knee injury, and we don't have a lot of information on what that injury was and how much she's recovered and how she'll deal with the ring rust this weekend. Although it is worth noting, Irene Aldana has been quite open about her battles with stress and anxiety on fight night and how nerves can sometimes get the better of her. So on a big pay-per-view like this, you know, maybe she'll flake out and underperform. It's difficult to say. You know, the last time she fought on, you know, big pay-per-views against Pudilova and Betch Correia, she didn't look that good. So maybe she won't look good this weekend either. But Ketlen Viera is decent. Like I say, I don't know if I'm betting her yet. She's definitely on my radar, though, as a potential bet. And I'm going to be eagerly anticipating any Fight Week interviews that come out from her this week. So if you do find any nuggets of information on this knee injury, guys, if you do find any interviews that get published with like Portuguese media outlets and stuff, please leave them in the comments section below and let me know how you feel about this fight. I'm super interested in betting Ketlen Viera. I think that this is a tough fight for Aldana. Now let's go into the next fight that I want to talk about in today's video. We've already talked about one big favourite with Matt Brown. Let's talk about another one. Matt Brown, sorry, with Peter Yan. Let's talk about another big favourite in Matt Brown. So if we look at the odds on this fight, we have got Matt Brown, currently the second biggest favourite on the card behind Peter Yan, at odds of 1.29, which is minus 345 for an implied probability of 78%. So to be able to bet Matt Brown here, you've got to give him around about an 80-ish, 81, 82% chance of winning. And if you look at the odds on Ben Saunders, currently around about an average of 3.80, which is plus 280 for an implied probability of 26%. So to gain any value on Mr. Saunders here, you've got to give him around about a 35% chance of winning, which might not be that difficult to do. So where do we begin with this one? I've already given the huge speech about betting big favourites with the Peter Yan fight, and how, when you bet guys in this odds range, the odds range that Matt Brown is in at the moment, they really need to tick every single box. And whereas I said, I guess you could throw Yan into like parlays, accumulators, I don't love it, but he does pretty much tick every box. There's no way you can bet Matt Brown at these odds, because this is a guy that definitely does not tick every box. So straight off the bat, the first red flags with him, he's 38 years old. No, it's very hard to justify capping any fighter in this odds range when they get to 38 years old, because at any moment in time, Father Time can creep up on them, and it tends to creep up on them very quickly and out of nowhere. Also, Matt Brown retired. He hasn't fought since 2017. He's coming back off a 2-year layoff. And when fighters talk about retirement, they should stay retired. It almost never ends well for him. When a fighter retires and they come back, they almost always look worse, and they should have stayed retired. So these are huge red flags for Matt Brown. His age, the 2-year layoff, and the fact that he retired. There's no way you can bet Matt Brown at these odds. And also, we think about Matt Brown, he's got this wild, aggressive style. But what, throughout Matt Brown's career, has been one of his biggest Achilles heels? Well, one of Brown's biggest Achilles heels is obviously the body shot. And it just happens that Ben Saunders has devastating body kicks. There aren't a lot of things that Ben Saunders does great, but one of the great things that he does is throw devastating kicks. And if Saunders uncorks one of those devastating body kicks that lands flush on Matt Brown, it's very possible that he absolutely folds Matt Brown like a plasterer's table. It's a big red flag, and that is why Matt Brown at these odds is absolutely crazy to me. I said in the Peter Yan fight that we wanted to keep it brief. I don't want to spend too much time on this fight talking about grapplings. I don't think it'll be relevant. Both these guys, Saunders is primarily a grappler, I guess. He's a very high-level brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu under Eddie Bravo. But both these guys usually like to stand and strike, and Saunders doesn't really have any offensive wrestling. So I do see this being a stand-up fight. If it does go to the ground, Saunders will have a huge advantage. One of Brown's weaknesses is the ground game, and like I say, Saunders is a very high-level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt, but I doubt that he will get a chance to use it. This will probably be a stand-up fight. Now, Saunders' biggest weaknesses have always been his striking defense, and we know, Matt Brown, very aggressive, hits very hard, decent boxing, and an absolute savage. So it's a tough fight for Saunders, but he does have paths to victory, particularly with those body kicks. Now, to summarise, I'm going to say something a little bit interesting here that I haven't said before, but I don't care too much. In fact, I don't care at all about what other people think of me. I just care about making money and placing bets that I'm happy with, placing bets that when I sleep at night, win or lose, I know that I've put my money in a strong position. I know I made the right decision. So, if this fight was taking place last month, I would have bet Ben Saunders, because I think, the 2-year layoff for Matt Brown, his age, the ring rest, the retirement, the susceptibility to body shots, the fact Saunders has got an advantage on the ground, these are more than enough reasons to give Ben Saunders a better than 26% chance of winning. So I would have taken a small gamble on Saunders. However, we are just coming out of a very long break in the UFC schedule. We had a nice three-week break before the UFC Washington card. And whenever we've got breaks in the UFC schedule, I don't stop working. I carry on trying to improve. And I went back and looked at all my results over the past year. And I do this towards the end of every year. So, we've only got 2 more events in 2019. So I thought, these 3 weeks off, let's go back over all my results from this year and try and find any trends, any areas where I might be making mistakes, any areas I might be able to tighten up and get better. And I haven't completed my evaluation of my results from this year yet, but there is one thing I might have spotted which I could tighten up on for 2020 to do better next year. So I'm always looking to learn, always looking to improve, always looking to tighten up weaknesses. And I do believe I found a weakness in my betting, which I need to correct. I haven't completely finished evaluating my results because I don't just want to, look at all my bets from 2019 and form an opinion on that and then completely change my betting style based on that. But now I want to go back further throughout my history into 2018, 2017, 2016, 2015, and see over a much longer period of time if this particular kind of bet has been losing money for me. And I'm not going to go into too much detail at the moment as to the type of bet that is causing me an issue and what I need to tighten up on, what I need to do differently, because it's not conclusive yet. I will talk about it more once I finish the evaluation. But a bet on Saunders would fall into the bracket of mistake that I've been making, or at least over the last 12 months. So for now, I'm just going to avoid this bet and pass until I can conclusively say whether I need to adjust the way that I place some kinds of bets. So yeah, I'm going to pass on Saunders for now. If you're looking for a high risk, high reward, juicy underdog for this weekend, Saunders is probably a guy. I think he's definitely a live underdog. But at the end of the day, all I care about is making money. And these kinds of bets have been costing me money in 2019. So I don't want to risk giving money to the bookies with this bet until I can do a proper evaluation of my results over a more long-term period. I hope you guys respect that. Like I say, I don't care really about picks. I don't care about being the smartest guy in the bar. I don't care that I pass a lot. All I care about is making money. And I know that there are a lot of you out there that appreciate the type of content that I put out, and that's why I make these videos, man. So yeah, Saunders isn't for me, but I think he can win for sure. And who knows, maybe after I complete my evaluation of my results from 2019 in the next break in the UFC schedule that we've got in early January, maybe we'll go back to pulling the trigger on bets like this. But for now, I'm going to pump the brakes and dip out. And now we get into the final fight that I want to talk about in today's video, which is going to be Colby Covington against Kamaru Usman. 2 guys with exactly the same professional MMA record of 15-1, which you don't see very often. And before we get into this, I think I need a drink, because again, I just talked a lot there. Alright. Sorry to be unprofessional, but here we go. Right, I've got a lot to say about this fight, boys and girls, because 0.2% of my viewers are female. Hello, ma'am. So yeah, where do I begin? I know I'm going to take some shit for this one, but it's all good. It's all good. I need you to know I don't have any favourites in MMA. I love everybody. Now, Colby had me dancing, you know what I mean, to his walkout in the opener of the video. I'm not biased in any way. I love Colby. I definitely love Colby. So before we get into this, let's look at this fight from a betting point of view. So Usman's odds have declined today across a lot of websites, but this is normal to the trend that you see on big pay-per-views. So generally what you see, as a general rule, what you will see on big pay-per-views is, for whatever reason, throughout Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday, you'll see the odds like gradually decline on the favourites, and then from Thursday, Friday, right up until, you know, close to the time of the fights, you'll see the odds on the favourites continue to improve while the odds on the underdogs decline. So as a general rule, what this means is, on big pay-per-views, if you want to bet the favourite, wait until very close to fight day, which is the reason why I haven't bet Viera or Moraes yet. That's the secret. Did you hear that? But yeah, I'm joking a little bit, but in all seriousness, the reason why I haven't bet Viera and Moraes yet is because, like I said, as a general trend, odds on favourites on big pay-per-views get better the closer you get to fight day, whereas the odds on underdogs get worse. So what you want to do, if you're planning to bet an underdog, bet them at the beginning of the week, the beginning of fight week. If you want to bet a favourite, wait until the end of fight week. Now, of course, there will be exceptions to the rule. Yes, Moraes' odds might absolutely get destroyed if Aldo shows up looking like Skeletor on Friday. Moraes might close at 1.30 and you miss out on a betting opportunity. But as a general rule, you guys know me, with every aspect of betting, I like to work in general rules. As a general rule, the odds on favourites will improve the closer you get to the time of the fight. The odds on underdogs will decline. Just for big pay-per-views, the odds movement on, you know, these ESPN Plus cards, these smaller cards, they tend to be a lot more unpredictable. So there you go, dropping knowledge. Right, I'm going to take some heat for this one, boys, so don't be shy in the comments. Don't hold back. Please let me know what you think about my thoughts on this fight. If you agree, if you disagree, but I do have quite a strong opinion on this one. So the odds, let's get into it. So currently, Kamaru Usman, around about an average of, call it 1.55, which is minus 182 for an implied probability of 65%. So to bet Usman here, you'd want to give him around about a 70% chance of winning. As I'm saying that, I'm like, oh, actually, yeah, that ain't bad. Okay, and to bet on Colby here, you see Colby's odds around about an average of 2.55, which are plus 155 for an implied probability of 39%. So in the eyes of the bookies, you know, if Colby's got around about a 40% chance of winning. If you wanted to bet him in this fight, I'd recommend you give him at least a 50% chance of winning. I'm gonna come right out the gate, tell you guys exactly how I feel about this fight. I like Usman in this fight a lot. I really do feel Usman wins this fight because I believe that Colby is better everywhere. And look, I love Colby Covington. I think he's a character. I think he makes the sport more fun. I think the sport is way more interesting with him in it. And look, from one conservative to another, I'm rocking the Boris Johnson t-shirt. Colby is a big Donald Trump man. You know, from one conservative to another, I love Colby, right? I really, really do. But from a stylistic point of view, this is an absolute nightmare matchup for Colby, really. Unfortunately, to some extent, or to quite a big extent, Usman's advantages are baked into the odds because he is quite a big favourite. But, you know what, like, you might be able to cap him at 70%, you know, you might be able to. And again, I really hate to be confusing and vague to you guys. Please don't think I'm being deceptive. But understand that this is Wednesday night and we've still got fight week interviews to come. We've still got weigh-ins. We've still got the stare downs. We've still got a ton of potential odds movement on these fights to come. And I just haven't made my mind up yet. And I probably won't make my mind up until Friday night after the weigh-ins or fight day. This is just the way I do business. It's just the way I do things. I can't help it. And I'm not going to rush into bets for the sake of putting out YouTube videos. But I hope that by me sharing my entire thoughts of these fights and all my research, you'll be able to make your own decision and make money on these fights. And I'm hoping that you will respect that I do this for a living and I need to make cash. And for that reason, I need to place bets when it's the right time for me. And I need to pass on bets when I feel it's the right thing to do. But I'm definitely interested in betting Usman here for all the reasons that I'm going to describe in this video. So I believe that Usman is significantly better than Colby in every single aspect of MMA apart from pure boxing. And we'll talk more about that in a little while, more about the striking aspect of the fight. Now, I know that Colby on paper is an NCAA Division 1 level wrestler, and I know that, you know, Usman is an NCAA Division 2 level wrestler, so on the very basic levels, you know, you may think that Colby is the better wrestler, and he might be the better pure wrestler, but in terms of MMA grappling, Kamaru Usman is light years ahead of Colby Covington. You know, if we're comparing, you know, MMA grappling styles between these two guys, you know, Colby Covington's got more of like a herky-jerky, wear on you style, like a Ben Askren, you know, where he's the majority of his takedown entries come way too above hip height to cause a guy like Usman a problem. Whereas Usman has got that Matt Hughes, Khabib, George St. Pierre, shut your shit down style of grappling, where he doesn't give you a fucking inch to breathe, and it is quite spectacular to watch. And in terms of MMA grappling, Usman is just light years ahead of Colby. And that is one of the reasons why I think he could be a very good bet in this fight, because for me, Usman has the grappling technique to dictate where this fight takes place, and potentially completely big brother Colby Covington. You know, a lot of people who are, you know, leaning towards Colby in this fight, planning to bet Colby in this fight, keep talking about Colby's ability to scramble and make Usman work and wear him down. But I think like a real big detail they might be missing out on is in order to be able to scramble or improve your position or pop back up to your feet, you need the space to do that. And Usman, just like those guys I mentioned, you know, GSP, Khabib, Matt Hughes, he is from the school of shutting your shit down, and he always favors position over submission. And once he puts you in a bad position, there's no space to create a scramble. So I don't know where this narrative's coming from, because based on the past performances that I've seen, I don't see Colby as really being able to stop Usman from taking him down. I just don't think he can. You go back to that 4th round of Colby's fight against Rafael Dos Anjos. You know, Dos Anjos took him down quite easily and was able to control him for a little period of time. This was in the 4th round when Colby had been beating up on him for 15 minutes. Can you imagine what Kamaru Usman, you know, might be able to do to him? And, you know, another thing, you know, that the people are talking about with this fight, where they're leaning towards Colby, and Colby even said it himself today in the athlete panel video that the UFC have put out. You know, Colby said that he's going to break Usman, he's going to wear him down. But realistically, where is evidence that Usman can be worn down and broken coming from? Like, Usman's cardio has looked incredible. Like, Usman has never slowed down. Yes, he looked a little bit panicky against Emil Weber Mech, but that was because Mech had like Viking KO power in his strikes and was headhunting, and Usman, you know, wasn't really sure how to deal with the pressure, whereas Colby doesn't have that kind of power to be able to, you know, turn Usman into a fighter that could panic like that. You know, yes, Leon Edwards caused him some trouble, but this was back in 2015. You know, Usman was only, you know, 27 back then. A lot will have changed since then. Usman will have improved a lot. So we haven't really seen Usman slow down at all. His cardio is never in question. His cardio is legendary. And yet people, including Colby, are talking about, you know, Usman struggling to keep up with Colby's pace. I mean, there's just no evidence of this. It's a complete assumption. It's like the people last week that were assuming that Song would be able to stuff Cody Staman's takedowns. It's just a complete assumption that's fabricated out of thin air. There's no actual substance, which, you know, there's nothing baked in reality that says Usman's going to struggle to keep up with the pace that Colby's going to set. And of course, when we talk about pace, you know, we think of Colby peppering his opponent with strikes, and, you know, that's all well and good. I do think if the fight is contested in boxing range, Usman probably will struggle to keep up with the pace that Colby sets. Usman probably will fade, but like we said, Usman's got the grappling to dictate where this fight takes place. He can big brother Colby. So Colby can't use his high volume boxing to wear on Usman and break him down if Colby is pinned against the cage or on his back on the ground. So it's one of those things where, like, yes, I completely agree with anyone that says Usman's going to struggle to keep up with the pace that Colby sets in boxing range. But has Colby got the MMA grappling to keep the fight in boxing range? Because based on past performances, what I've seen is that Usman should be able to drive Colby into the cage and beat him up and just big brother him and use his physicality to outwork him. That's what I'm seeing personally. I could be wrong, but I just don't see Colby being able to keep the fight in boxing range for long enough for it to count. But I do agree with you. You know, there's nothing more exhausting than getting punched in the face. And both these guys have got bad striking defense. But the difference is Kamaru Usman is a single shot power striker. You know, he'll throw one power strike, but then Colby will fire back with 3 volume strikes. He's always touching his opponent. You know, leg kicks, jabs, just constantly wearing them down. And I do think if he can keep the fight in boxing range, he will win. He will outwork Kamaru. The problem is, I don't think he can keep the fight in boxing range. I think Usman's grappling is too good. And another thing that we've really got to pay attention to, and I think a real key detail that people are missing here, they're leaning towards Colby, is that, you know, Kamaru Usman, people are talking about, you know, Usman not being able to keep up with the pace that that Colby sets. You know, Colby being able to wear him down. And maybe they're right. Maybe they are right. But Usman's not going to slow down in the first round. He's not going to slow down in the second round. It's unlikely he's going to slow down in the third round. So when is this momentum swing in Colby's favour going to come? It's probably going to be in the second half of the fight, the 4th round or the 5th round, maybe the 3rd round if you're lucky. But by then, Usman might already have dominated and be up 3 rounds. I mean, what is the good in Colby wearing Usman down and breaking him if he will be in a position where it's too late in the fight and he needs a finish to win? You know, for all we know, Usman could ragdoll Colby for the 1st, 2nd and 3rd round, then slow down, lose the 4th and 5th, but still win, you know, a 48-47 decision. I don't see Usman slowing down in the 1st, 2nd and 3rd round. So I don't see Colby's pace as being too much of an issue. And of course, people might say, oh, well, maybe Colby will get a late finish. But again, this is just fantasy, in my opinion. You know, we saw Colby Covington. He's been an absolute decisionator in his last 5 fights. He got 2 finishes against Griffin and Mounier, but of course they're at a much lower level than Usman. But if we look at his last fight, his 25-minute 5-round fight against Robbie Lawler, I mean, I looked at the striking stats for this fight, and Colby Covington landed 7.6 million strikes in this fight and never hurt Robbie Lawler at all. If you look at the 3rd round, Robbie Lawler wasn't even wearing that much damage, and you know, it's quite amazing how a guy can land that many strikes and not really hurt their opponent. You know, we know Usman's very tough. He's got a great chin. I would certainly trust Usman's chin, you know, at 32 years old more, and I would trust, you know, an older fight with more miles on the clock like Robbie Lawler. So it's very unlikely Colby gets a finish here. So if the momentum does swing in his favour when Usman starts to wear down, it's likely Usman's already up a decent amount of rounds anyway, so it won't even play a factor. So this is where I think people are reading this fight incorrectly. What else do we have to say on this one? So much to say. Yes, another thing that is worth paying attention to is that both these guys are very similar. You know, I'm actually going to refer to this. Video again. Excuse me. If we go to the UFC YouTube channel, oh, this is the video here. This athlete panel. The first time the UFC had put a video out like this. This UFC 245 athlete panel. It is worth taking a look at. This video here, both guys basically say that their goal in fights is to break their opponent, to wear them down and break them. And that's interesting because both guys have had an incredible amount of success doing it throughout their career. Both guys are 15-1. You know, in their entire run in the UFC, you know, Wally Alves was the only guy to stop Colby Covington from being able to break him. But against every single person these guys have faced in the UFC, they've both had a lot of fights. You know, they've been able to impose their will on their opponents and break them. And both these guys are very, very good at that, at being the hammer. But we've never seen them be the nail. We've never really seen them. We've seen flashes of them being the nail, but they're always the hammer. And if we look at how both these guys have reacted to being the nail, I could tell you that they haven't reacted very well. If you go back and watch Usman's fight against Emil Mek, you can see that he panicked when he was put under pressure. Didn't react well at all. But again, like we spoke about earlier on in this breakdown, Colby doesn't pose the same threat as Mek in terms of power strikes, so not sure if Usman will react the same way when Colby is walking him down. But if we look at, you know, Colby's past fights, there have been flashes to him struggling to be in that nail position as well. You know, on the brief occasions in his last fight where Robbie Lawler started to get aggressive and let his hands go, he backed Colby up quite easily, and Colby didn't like it. We saw Rafael dos Anjos do the same thing in flashes. You know, Maia in the first half of this fight was able to light Colby up and inflict a ton of damage. So the point I'm trying to make is both these guys are very, very used to playing the role of the hammer, and no one has been able to stop them. But in the brief flashes where they've been the nail, they haven't looked good. And the real question here is, who is going to be the nail in this fight? Because they can't both be the hammer. Someone's going to have to be the hammer, some guy's going to have to be the nail. And is the nail able to weather the storm long enough to switch momentum back in their favour? Because you look at Colby Covington and Kamaru Usman, they're both traditional wrestlers, and we know historically, you know, when wrestlers are put on their back, they tend to be very weak, they tend to struggle. But neither of these guys are ever on their back because their offensive wrestling is so great. Now, I don't believe Colby Covington can take Usman down and control him in the first 3 rounds of this fight. Usman would have to be very, very tired for Covington to be able to control him. Covington's offensive wrestling is just not at the level to do it. Like, Usman's MMA grappling is outstanding. It's absolutely incredible. Whereas I do believe Usman can take Covington down and control him. So how is Covington going to react on his back? You know, we know Covington's got legendary cardio in boxing range, and when he's the hammer, you know, breaking his opponents down with offensive wrestling. But how does Covington's cardio hold up if he's on the bottom, carrying Usman's bodyweight, getting beat up on in a position he's not used to beating in? These are all very interesting questions, and they are questions that are making me lean heavily towards Usman in this fight. So, I think I might have just covered off most things, you know. Just scanning through. So yeah, I mean, for me, this is just a fight where ultimately, I think out of the two guys, Usman has the skills to dictate where this fight takes place. And that's really what it boils down to for me. I mean, the only range where I see Covington causing Usman a problem is boxing range. But I don't think Covington will be able to stop Usman from driving him into the cage and beating him up if Usman starts to get into trouble in that boxing range. And if Usman does fade in this fight, I believe it will come very, very late on, when chances are he's probably won the fight anyway. But it's a big assumption. I say Usman's given us no reason to doubt his cardio. Now, I've just been very complimentary to Usman, but obviously his advantages are to quite a big degree baked into his odds. You know, he's currently a 1.55 favourite, minus 182 for an implied probability of 65%. Can you cap him at 70%? I don't know. But it might be possible, actually. The more I think about it, I mean, doing these breakdowns are really helpful to me, because in a short space of time, they help me kind of like summarize all my feelings. And quite often, when I do this, I get more confident in me being right when I kind of like unpack everything. Because as I'm sat here now, I can't really think of many reasons to bet Colby. Like, I don't know if you're new to watching my channel, but in the past I've used the example of drawing 2 columns and listing all the reasons to bet one guy in one column, all the reasons to bet the other guy in the other. Should have, like, you know, a Kamaru Usman column, a Colby Covington column. And if I'm visualizing this in my head now, this diagram, Usman's column is very full, and Colby's column's only really got like 3 or 4 things on him. And a lot of the things in Usman's column are like factual, whereas a lot of things in Colby's column, you know, reasons to bet Colby are like, oh, you know, he might, you know, Usman might not be able to keep up with the pace that he sets. They're all like loosey-goosey assumptions, because chances are Usman can. So as I'm actually sat here, I am talking myself into a bet on Usman, just because, you know, if you really think, how does Colby win this fight? Well, he's going to either win this fight by keeping the fight in boxing range and outstriking Usman, which is unlikely, and if it happens, probably comes later in the fight, or, I know, just out-grappling Usman, but I don't see that happening. Usman's a better MMA grappler. The only thing that would cause me a bit of concern with Usman is that, you know, if you go back and listen to his appearances on the Joe Rogan podcast, he has been quite open about the fact that he's got 2 badly injured knees that he just kind of deals with and just fights with anyway. So I don't know, maybe he fights injured and for that reason he'll underperform. But if you watch Usman in the athlete panel today, you'll see he looks supremely confident. Supremely confident. A lot of people are talking about Colby being in his head, about, you know, Usman potentially being emotional, which could affect his cardio. At the athlete panel, I didn't see that at all. I saw Usman calm, relaxed, focused, and truthfully, Usman is talking like a guy that absolutely knows that Colby has nothing for him. Like, Colby is almost, Usman is almost disdainful of the suggestion that Colby might be able to cause him a problem. And I've got to be honest with you, after researching the fight, I could really see Usman dominating and big brothering him over 5 rounds. Now, I know I'm going to take a ton of shit for that opinion. I know a lot of people are going to leave some nasty comments. That's just the way I see it, man. Maybe I'm wrong. So I haven't made my mind up on betting this fight yet. Like I say, when a fighter admits to having serious injuries and fighting with serious injuries, it's always a huge red flag for me. And like I say, Usman openly admitted on the Rogan podcast he fights with 2 knees that are basically destroyed, and he just fights through it and gets on with it. But at the same time, based on past performances, Usman should get this done. I don't love his odds, I don't. But at the same time, you know, when the press conferences start, you know, when the fight week interviews start, the trash talk starts, or the casual money starts flying around, I do expect oddsman's. I do expect Usman's odds to improve in the run up to the time of the fight. So I'm just gonna sit back, enjoy fight week, continue researching all these fights that I haven't researched yet. I'm gonna hope the odds on Usman improve, and then I'm gonna make a decision after the weigh-ins on Friday, or on fight day. But I do like Usman in this fight, guys. I really do. I haven't completely made my mind up on it yet. So let me know, guys, what you think about the fights that I've talked about in this video. Do you agree with how I see the Covington Usman fight? Do you agree with what I've said about the Moraes versus Aldo? Do you think I'm being overly cautious? Do you think I should pass on Moraes? And let me know what you think about the Aldana versus Viera fight too. But please, before you leave a comment on any of these fights, please don't work from hazy memories, guys. Please go do the fight research yourself, so that when you do leave a comment, you are coming from a real place of a strong, informed opinion. You're not just working from hazy memories and kind of guessing, because your mind will definitely play tricks on you. But that is going to be it for today's video, guys. If you want another video this week where I break down Holloway versus Volkanovski, please hit the like button below. As soon as we get 500 likes on this video, I will drop the second video this week. Also, don't forget to check out Kotar, the artist behind the thumbnail of today's video. I will leave a link to his Instagram profile in the description below. I'd really appreciate it if you could give him a follow. And take care, everyone, and I will be back very soon with another breakdown video. Love you guys, and if I don't see you before the weekend, take care, and I hope you crush it. I hope you make tons of money. Good luck to everyone. I love you for watching.